I think you withheld information so that you could orchestrate a shootout and have something else to film. Is that how you get your kicks, you sick fuck? Does that sound about right?
I think that would be a highly unprofessional thing for me to do.
Well, what I meant to say was, we know you withheld information. You gave us an MP4 file and your camera shoots in a .mov, which means you had to export it through a editing program.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the GarageCast, everybody. I'm really tired. We watched NightCrawler this week. What are you doing? NightCrawler is easily one of my favorite films of all time. It came out in like 2014, stars Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Dan Gilroy. I don't really like a lot of Dan Gilroy's other work, but NightCrawler. All right, let's segue into how we're going to do this because you flipped off someone off camera. So we have a surplus of people here today. If you guys want to pop your heads in for this part.
So we have Sergio here.
Hi. Oh, hi.
Basically, we have 6 people here, but we are too poor to afford the microphone. We're too poor to afford the proper microphone equipment to record all 6 of us at once. And space, yeah. As you can see, we're crammed in here as it is. So what we're going to do is sub out. Mylan's going to sub out with Sergio at some point. Cameron's going to sub out with Anthony at some point.
I feel like the joke would have been better. It's just like out of nowhere, just like Mylan's gone, Sergio's in.
It would have been out of context.
Yeah, so editor, edit that out.
I'm the editor.
That was another
I'm
joke.
Editor, host, director.
He's not really getting these jokes right now, is he?
Yeah, he's too tired.
It's okay.
I'm too tired to understand humor right now. NightCrawler, great film. One of my favorite movies. Stars Jake Gyllenhaal. This is easily Jake Gyllenhaal's best role, in my opinion.
What about Spider-Man?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I guess Donnie Darko. I haven't seen Donnie Darko, though. So
I think Nightcrawler's he's doing more work.
Yeah.
Like he's much more seasoned.
One thing in Nightcrawler too is every time I look up stuff about this movie, a lot of people claim that it would not have been good had Jake Gyllenhaal not been the lead. Because, and like I said earlier, there isn't really anything by Dan Gilroy. I think Dan Gilroy's director, but there isn't really anything by Dan Gilroy other than Nightcrawler that he made that is super like famous or well respected like Nightcrawler is that I'm aware of. And a lot of people point to Jake Gyllenhaal improvising a lot in this movie, like the mirror scene.
He was a screenwriter for Real Steel.
I'm not sure. Anyways, the mirror scene, which is a super important part of the film, is apparently all improvised by Jake Gyllenhaal, which is the scene where he slams a mirror.
That was a pretty good scene.
Yeah. So this movie is pretty much just a straight up character study. There's a lot that could be said about it, but Lou Bloom is a really interesting character.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anywhere that they want to start? Because I have a lot to say about his character, but if you guys have anything you want to start with.
Should we start at the beginning?
What do you want?
It's ridiculous.
He's a thief. Just trying to get by.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the thing about this movie... So I'm going to bring up something that Marty once said to me, who, if you haven't seen Marty, he's been on the podcast before. But
check out our previous podcasts.
Yeah.
Burning.
I think,
I forgot.
yeah, there was one other one that he was in. I don't remember what it was.
But anyways, he's in it, and you should watch it because you have nothing
else.
Oh,
it was The Lobster. Anyways, so I was talking with him about this movie, and he said that the movie made him feel dirty. When he watched it, it made him feel like it just made him feel bad about himself in a way, like, you know, like it made him feel dirty because he watched the film. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Why are you?
And just keep going.
So
You're doing great.
So, anyways, the reason I think it does that is because
you're stabbing me.
the reason.
Please recycle it.
Also,
shove it up my ass.
I gotta say,
I mean,
Red
that is
Bull
recycling
smell
it.
is so annoying, but that's fine. Like the smell of Red Bull is just gross.
You definitely stabbed me.
Sorry, I need to.
Well, I mean, I'm the one that meant it, but you definitely stabbed me.
Anyways, the reason I think that it makes you feel dirty while you're watching it is because the movie spends about half of the movie getting you to empathize and like feel bad for Lou Bloom as a character. Like that whole opening scene where he's trying to get that job at like the construction site or the scrapyard or whatever it was.
Him trying to like just scrap for money, and
right.
then like he finally finds an opportunity, and he's still kind of struggling with it at the beginning.
Yeah. It spends about half the movie making you empathize with his character. So basically, you throughout the whole movie, as it goes further and further into him doing worse and worse things, you want to justify it somehow. And like after seeing the movie a few times, you don't anymore. But upon the first time watching the movie, it makes you want to justify the things that he's doing. Like when he first pulls the dead body at that car crash over to the side, you're like, well, he needs that shot. You know, there were a few times that he did stuff that you commented on where it showed that you were actually empathetic towards what he was doing.
Well, no, because there was the one time where his partner passed away, or not passed away, he got shot. But I was like, grab the camera and run. So like,
oh yeah.
But I remember there was one other time you called me out on it. I forget what it was.
Yeah, but it was because you were like, grab the camera and run because you want him to do it. You know, you want him to get away with it.
Well, and that's just what anyone would do if they have like an expensive camera on the ground.
Right, but then you don't really, I guess until the end with that interrogation scene, it doesn't really all come. You don't realize how fucked up the situation actually was. I guess
it was pretty fucked up.
I
knew what he was gonna do once he agreed to the money deal.
Yeah, but yeah, that's like an overarching story of his character.
When the first time we see him, when he's cutting down the chain link fence and trying to get the money for it, the very first time we meet him, he knocks out a security guard.
Yeah,
and then steals his watch.
And then steals his watch. So we're already primed. Like we know that this guy, you know, lives in the shadows and does things.
An anti-hero.
Right. But then immediately after that is when we get the scene where he goes to the scrapyard, and you kind of understand why he did those things. You know, and I feel like that was intentional that they put those scenes together because they wanted you to be like, oh, that's a fucked up thing to do, and then be like, oh, I'm okay with that now. You know, I'm okay with him doing that.
Well, I mean, like, it was. I would say it's kind of relatable because everybody's like trying to scrounge for money, and that was his way of doing it. But he was getting shot down because he was trying to get just a little bit more. So it was just like, oh damn, really?
He was trying to leverage it.
Yeah, but it's just like that's why you kind of feel bad for him. It's just like he's trying to make a living.
Yeah,
that's the way he knows how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but he's overall like throughout the whole movie. It's just again and again he gets deeper and deeper, and it's like. I know we talked about this when we were watching it. You can tell that because he straight up says that he spends a lot of time on the internet researching things, and you can tell that he researches things and then sort of repeats that information that he researches. And there's instances where it literally seems like he's like reading an article or something.
Yeah,
you know?
there was when he was I'm not gonna try and quote it, but fuck it, never mind. Forget what I'm saying.
Well, it seems like his brain is kind of running on high capacity because he's very motivated and very like zoned into what he's doing all the time. So he retains a lot of information, and I feel like part of his learning process is to then take that information out in the world and to apply it. So he's applying everything that he's just learned in his own kind of weird, manipulative way.
He's like a walking TED Talk.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say too is he learns. You see him start to learn things and apply them, and it seems very genuine at first. But then as it goes on, you see him start to learn how he can manipulate the things that he's learned.
Like at first it's like, oh, he's a go-getter.
Yeah.
He's just like eager and he like wants to do good and he wants to like build a business. But then he comes up to the obstacles, and the way he deals with these obstacles is always
super manipulative.
Is always to fuck other people over in order to get what he wants.
And he's good at it. Like the whole the whole dinner scene when he's sitting down with Nina and he's like going through everything that all the things that he has on her basically. He doesn't have any dirt on her. It's not the typical like I know what you did so now you have to do this for me. It's literally just him being like, well, if you have low ratings, you're going to lose your job, and I can give you higher ratings, and you know that I can do that.
And he knows her history.
Yeah,
because like he said, he does everything on the internet.
Yeah.
So he just
he straight up he says, she's like, how do you know all this about me? And I forget exactly what he says, but he's just something along the lines of like everything about you's on the internet. Well, not everything, but most of everything.
What's not on the internet, he went in and like found out.
Yeah, on his own.
Through conversation, like through talking to her in his way.
Yeah.
Figured it all out.
And I don't know, it's just weird things like the the tie thing, for example, like where he's talking about the news anchor that wears the same gold tie every Friday. He picks that up and notices it, and it never gets used in a manipulative way in the in the film, but it seems like he's like he wouldn't do it without manipulative intentions. You know what I mean?
Well, I would say it's like because he's trying to make everybody like him.
Yeah,
like he's doing this really fucked up shit. But in the eyes of everyone around in the like little broadcast area, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's our man right there. That's the guy." Like,
well, he knows how to play that anchor because like he knows the anchor. He doesn't like he's kind of a surface guy. Like he's just there to be the face of the news channel. Yeah. So like he knows in this setting, like all I need to do is notice that guy's tie, and it'll be like, "Oh, I like that guy, Lou. He's a good kid because he noticed my tie."
Right.
So yeah, he knows how to play like different people in different ways.
Yeah. There's it creates a lot of interesting dynamics between characters. Like the relationship between him and Nina has always really interested me because I studied this movie for a film class and
so you're cheating.
Yeah, basically. But I'm trying to come up with new ideas and new opinions about it, but I studied it from a very Freudian perspective who like the whole like the labyrinth, the good and the bad mothers, good and bad fathers, the evil double, which the evil double plays a really big role in this movie. That's something I still want to talk about. But there's a lot of doubles in this movie where like Nina, for example, is like a good bad mother in the sense that she sort of Lou's like mother figure in the movie to start, and then it slowly turns the opposite. You know what I mean? It gets flipped. Because she starts off as like a mentor character to him, and everything that he starts to learn and how he starts to get introduced to the world is through her, and she gives him advice. And like one of my favorite scenes in the movie that shows that is she's like, think of our newscast as a screaming woman running down the street with her throat cut, and then he immediately is like, all right, I get it, I understand, and then goes out and does a bunch of fucked up shit.
He creates that scenario because it's exactly what she wants, and he needs to give that to her.
Exactly. And then throughout the film you see him start to almost like surpass the master, you know, and then take advantage of her and put her in a situation that she feels very uncomfortable in. And then by the end of it she's okay with it though, you know. It's like at the end she even says, I think we should all strive to be a little bit more like Lou or something along those lines.
He gets her on his side, even though
I mean, I feel like she was always kind of on his side because she was the one that was like, yes, let's use this. So she like already had that part, but like Lou was kind of just backing her up on it. Like, if this guy's doing it, I'm like, all right. If he's doing it, like I can do it too. Like,
well, you also throughout the movie you kind of start to see Lou's morals reflect hers a little more and more throughout the film, because like one thing immediately in when he first goes to her and shows that footage, there's that other dude that's there, and he's like, oh, it's excessive. People are going to be eating their breakfast, and then she's like, and they'll talk about it at lunch. All right, sub. Where were we?
Something about lunch.
Oh yeah, and she's like, and they'll talk about it over lunch. So then, as it goes on, you see that like Lou at one point even says, oh. The point of that, the reason I brought that up is because Nina is very clearly willing to take risks for the newscast and to get better ratings. And there's a part later in the film when Lou literally says, like, in a business you need to take risks. Like he says that like word for word. And like the whole film, Nina is taking risks because they're putting a bunch of like graphic content on public television.
He is the risk, yeah.
So you kind of see it progress, and that ambition starts to become very bad.
Thank you.
In the sense that like
it becomes uncomfortable, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes me scared. I don't want to be in a room with Jake Gyllenhaal with Lou.
Right.
Get away from me, Lou. Get away from me. No, I'm just kidding. It is pretty scary though, especially seeing that, like even noticing the little cues and how they change the way he like not interacts, but the way he acts. Like they play the music. Because it's kind of like the movie is not from his perspective, but from, like you said, trying to get us to empathize with the character. And so, like, that scene where he's, like, walking towards her, all fucking, like, you know, and he's, like, talking about, like, oh yeah, you know, this is my dream.
That, like, monologue.
And the song that's playing is very sweet, and it's like, wow, you know, I feel attached to this guy. This guy really has a dream. But if the song wasn't there...
if the song wasn't there, it would just be like...
You could the whole tone of that scene could change super easily with just a different song.
Well, I want to talk about the soundtrack too. Sorry.
No, because I was gonna say like that. Like I remember Louis was saying
Purposely
like the soundtrack. He said that like a lot of people didn't like it, but I'm like it fits with the story.
It's so yeah, like
he's our hero, even if he doesn't do heroic things.
Right.
He's an anti-hero.
Not even.
There's this scene where I think. Pretty sure it's the first time
he opened his mouth up, man.
I'm pretty sure it's the first time that we see Lou do something questionable, which is when he pulls the dead body at the car crash.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the first like really questionable thing that he does.
But the music that's playing is like,
yeah,
of beauty, glory.
The auteur has found his setting.
Yeah, you were saying you made the joke about like, Lou is like an auteur. He brings the auteur of Nightcrawler.
Right. Yeah. Because like obviously you can't do that. Like you can't pull dead bodies to get the shot better.
Well,
and that's something Bill Paxton's character never would have done.
Right. Even though Bill Paxton's character is a total piece of shit, and you're meant to hate him.
Sure.
He would never do something.
That.
He also would never sabotage somebody else's car and put them in the hospital.
Yeah, no, I
actually killed him.
Yeah.
That was fucked.
Anyways, and going back to the soundtrack, a lot of people shit all over the soundtrack for this movie and said it doesn't fit well and that it's not a good soundtrack. But I think it's and I think that's because this movie's technically a thriller, and in a thriller you want the tense soundtrack that really gets your heart pumping.
It's a different kind of thriller. I think it doesn't really have an exact genre, you know. It's horror porn. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but they
real quick. Who was it that said that Lou was ballsy? Was that you?
I thought Nina said that in the movie, didn't she?
Who did they?
She said something about like.
Whatever.
No, I'm pretty sure it was one of us.
I don't know. I feel like somebody said maybe it was me, bro. I can't remember. But yeah, he was doing some incredibly ballsy fucking things. Going into the house to like moving the pictures
literally
around.
Just crosses the police line. He sneaks around and crosses the police
He's walking right up to people and be like, "Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
How did this person die? What happened?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah,
Excuse me, what happened?
Lights in people's faces.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say he also like when he first starts out, you see him go up to that police officer. And he puts a camera in his face and he's like, "What's going on here?" And the police officer's like, "Get the fuck out of here." And he's like, "Oh, just what's going on?" And he's like, "What are you doing? Get out of here." And he's like, "I just need to know what's going on," and blah, blah, blah. And he like wouldn't give up. And then when he gets to the next scene where he actually goes inside the house and everything, he asks someone what's going on, and they're like, "Who the fuck are you?" And then he's just like, "Okay," and goes to the next person, and then actually gets a slight sort of an interview. And then as soon as that person kind of blows him off, then he's like, "All right, next thing," and moves on and keeps moving. And that's where you see his character kind of start to learn his way around. You know, it's interesting
he never
to see his
reacts
progression.
either.
Yeah,
like, he never reacts to anybody who's telling him like to get the fuck out. He's just like, "Oh, I can't. Like, there's an obstacle. Oh, I'm just gonna go around. Like,
right.
I'm gonna weasel around." That's kind of his character.
He
what was the animal you said that it was? Was it a coyote?
A coyote.
You said Jake Gyllenhaal like
he based his character off of a coyote. He said he wanted to look like a coyote. He wanted to look hungry. Because coyotes always look kind of scraggly,
but not even hungry in the way that's like because like there's different types of hungry. There's like lion hungry where it paces back and forth and it's waiting patiently. His hungry is more like cunning, manipulative. It's like waiting patiently, not in
instead of like charging something like straight on. He kind of just like finds a different way to like around
almost like a scavenger or some shit. Yeah,
right.
You're saying?
When he keeps reminding me of like that auteur, like he's trying to bring the art to the net crawling industry, because even when he's talking with Bill Paxton, and Bill Paxton's like, "I'm gonna get a new van and I'm gonna bring you into it, and like you should be sucking my dick for this deal," and Jake Gyllenhaal is just completely uninterested. Like he's like with the sunglasses on, he's like, this guy doesn't get like the art of Nightcrawler. Like,
that's my favorite line in the movie is when he's like they're talking, he's like, "You keep talking like it's something I'm interested in, but I'm not." And then he finally like pushes him to the limit, and then that's when you kind of see him start to get that thing that pushes him over the edge, and he's like, and he calmly and like the most like creepy, in my opinion, is very creepy demeanor. He's just like, "I feel like grabbing you by your ears and screaming in your face that I'm not fucking interested." And then he just goes and gets in his car. And then Bill Paxton has a very like normal human reaction where he's like, "Fuck you then." And it's like,
this creep.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that too, is there's
Did we press record?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Cameron did. Yeah. There's the conversation between Lou and Rick where Rick is like it's in the climax scene where they're in the car and they're following the guys, the criminals. And he's like,
I thought the climax was actually Oh yeah, it was the scene where they were following the criminals.
Yeah.
Wait,
I felt more
you
tense.
said that it
the
wasn't.
car chase and then Rick
Well,
dying.
in my opinion, the climax is when Rick dies.
Yeah.
I felt more tense during
That's
the
the
part where he was
emotional.
going.
That's the emotional.
Yeah, I would
climax,
say-
yeah.
I would say that's the peak of the climax.
Yeah.
Like I would
It
say
starts to build up.
Yeah,
really.
it's been right like the whole. Like once they found the guy
Reach
at
my
his apartment,
climax.
that's where it starts like rising. Like oh shit,
The
shit's
tense
it's about to
diner
get
scene.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, you're, oh my god.
Well,
what's
like,
gonna happen?
I think that you would think that the climax would be the car crash and then when they go start recording stuff. But then when Lou goes over and he looks down at the guy and then he looks up and he's like, he's dead. Like my first time watching this, I was like, that guy is not dead. Like that guy's very much alive.
Yeah.
And then I was right, and the guy ends up shooting Rick. But I was gonna talk about something else and I lost it now.
You'll find
But
it again.
I guess let's talk about Rick and Lou. I would say that Rick and Lou are
An interesting
ref-
dynamic.
well, they're reflections of each other. One thing that when I studied this for my film class, one thing that I pointed out was the scene where Lou is trying to get a job in the beginning, and then Rick is trying to get a job
With
in the
Lou.
diner.
Your
They're
inspiration.
all of their traits that they start like listing off to sell themselves, as Lou puts it, are exactly the same. They're both like Lou's very more forward with it.
Yeah, I was about to say like the Rick seems more timid.
Yeah.
While Lou is just like
Lou is more eloquent. He says exactly how he's feeling.
Right.
Whereas
Well, Lou's sure of himself too.
Yeah,
he's very sure of what he's capable of, what he's learned, how he's learned it, and Rick is just
Unsure.
he's desperate and he doesn't feel he doesn't value himself at all. Like Lou has a line in it where he says, "Could it be possible that I value more than you value yourself?"
Yeah.
oh yeah, I remember that.
And I think that shows a lot about Rick's character in the beginning,
I agree.
and the confidence he builds
Yeah.
through this pairing throughout the movie, because he becomes a much more confident, much more assertive guy
Right.
towards the end.
cost him
That's
his
hot.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for
I
sure.
think
Well, that's why you don't deal with people like Louis Bloom.
True.
I think the obvious like the most obvious way you can see the difference between them is in Lou's scene where he's trying to get a job. He straight up says, "I'm a very hard worker." At one point, I'm pretty sure he says that. And then Rick goes, "I took 3 buses to get here." And that's the difference between them. Rick isn't gonna say, "I'm a hard worker." He's gonna say, "I took 3 buses to get here." Let the person like think, okay, that makes
Means
me a
he's
hard worker. I'm not gonna outward say I'm a hard worker, because then that almost like that creates an expectation that he's afraid he can't reach.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's-
Lou is like, I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
It's just a confidence thing.
Yeah.
Because Rick's confidence is like little to nothing,
Mhm.
and then just Lou's is just like all the way fucking up here.
Yeah.
Like it's not comparable.
Well, like the only thing that like when he does get the confidence, he still wasn't willing to like do the work until like Lou forced him into it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, I think that Rick and Lou are reflections of each other in the sense that they're sort of like the good and the evil double, except in this case, typically the evil double would be the antagonist of the film, not the protagonist, but in this case, it's the protagonist. It's flopped, or flipped, flopped.
mean,
Flip-flop.
it seemed like Rick still had morals, but once money was involved, he was like, okay. And,
Yeah.
Like, he was willing to do
Oh,
that.
I'll do it, dude. I'll do
Yeah.
it. And then he still doesn't
So-
actually
Yeah.
do it until Louis forces him
He
to
wasn't
do it.
he was better than Lou, I guess, but like once you involve
Well,
money, that
one thing
Anything's
I pointed,
better than a cockroach. You know what I mean?
That's true. One thing I pointed out
Doesn't have to be
when-
the opposite.
when I studied this was Rick sort of reflects Lou in the beginning of the film, in the sense that he has a lot of the same motives, and morals are somewhat similar as Lou was in the beginning of the film. Like Lou was trying to get an honest job in the beginning of the movie. Rick thinks that he has an honest job.
He was even willing to take an unpaid internship in order to
Yeah.
like get his foot in a construction business.
Yeah, which one thing I want to mention too is the reason I started off with talking about my friend who said that this film made him feel dirty is this entire movie is centered around forcing the audience to realize that us as an audience and the way that we carry ourselves in society and the way that we have formulated our society is what creates people like Lou. And so then subconsciously when you watch this movie, you realize that it is somehow in your own way your fault that people like Louis Bloom exist because
oh, that's ridiculous. I understand the concept, but that is pure fucking nonsense. But
What do
yeah,
you mean?
I was
it's
well,
true.
'cause-
It's not my responsibility of other people's like morals.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
no, but think
I
about
was thinking of it metaphysically on a level. We're gonna have to change everything on a course, like on a base
You're
system.
basically saying that since we want the drama in a way, like we crave for that news, that
Right.
that's his job. That's
Yeah.
what he does, and that's what pushes him to do it.
Yeah.
It's
It's
still
a sweeping
his choice to do it.
generalization, though, too. It's still his choice at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
it's still
if
his
anything,
choice.
it shows
I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm saying that the way that society works and the way that we carry ourselves, the things that society as a whole reacts to, which I guess it is a generalization, is not responsible, but is the reason that
contributes and is part of the problem, I suppose. But at the end of the day, for someone like this, it's still a core fundamental problem with themselves as a human being.
right.
It's
But
not
my point.
Well,
The
he's
point
an
that
outlier.
he's an outlier.
the point that I'm trying to make is that that's the reason that the film will make you feel dirty because you subconsciously it's trying to make you feel like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it totally works.
And
I
that
get
that paired with the fact that it spends over half the film trying to get you to empathize with this character that literally
And
intentionally
that's
gets
assuming
people
that
killed.
would work.
That's assuming that because like if you don't already know that that's like what the film is trying to do, you can definitely feel pretty filthy watching the film because it's not something you expect out of the hero. And as much as the crazy shit that he tries to do, you try to like find some semblance of sympathy there so that you can constantly think of him as the hero.
Hi, I'm Cameron 2.22.
Yeah, welcome, this Anthony,
Yeah, I swapped out. I'm Mylan. My name's Mylan.
Sergio,
I'm still Michael.
and I'm still Louis. Did we even do
I
introductions
think
for
I was
this one? I'm
Nah.
so tired.
You guys did introductions, I'm pretty sure, at the start. We didn't. I didn't
Yeah.
because I just came in and pretended to be Mylan for 2 seconds. That's why I sat like this. But anyway, something about sympathy. That's why we try so hard to, like you mentioned, to find
Sympathize for the
sympathize
character,
with this
yeah.
character. And at the end of the day, like that's because of like the film, the way it's designed, the music, it all tries to make it to where like he is the hero in a way, and it is. It doesn't. It's not. You can find sympathy with virtually any person, but the thing
Right.
is,
Well, I think also that's why that the monologue that you were talking about earlier, and how if the music was different, it would be a completely different implication. We get that monologue that's sort of right before things start to take a turn, and I think it's intentionally there so that it's like, no, this is a good guy. Now watch this.
yeah, it's purposeful. That's what I was saying. It's really well done. It makes you think. But yeah, I was just saying that like if you don't already know about that going into it, like that it's pretty clear that's what that's what the movie is trying to do, then it'll work on you pretty well. But since like I had already seen the movie and you always talk to me about it outside, it's like it doesn't work on me necessarily because it's not my first time watching the movie.
Right. No, it definitely, the reason that I like this movie so much is because the first time I watched it, it hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird experience.
Yeah.
Well, when we I can also I think everybody can kind of see themselves in Louis Bloom a little bit because we've all had to get jobs and we've all had to like kind of sell ourselves in a way that okay, what does the employer want? What do I need to say to the employer for them to be like, oh, it's a good working kid.
Yeah, I think I know best than anybody. Oh, so what do you need of me? Your entire body.
Yeah. And your soul
how long,
eventually,
yeah.
yeah.
6 years.
Anthony's in the Navy.
Yeah, we kind of we have to kind of sell our souls to employers sometimes, and we can all like at least I could see myself in his situation, kind of having to like do that a little bit, like having to
at least to get his foot in the door.
Yeah, at least to get his foot in the door, like
you know he can't like get anywhere. I guess like being a NightCrawler, if he's just always in the back, like, he's always got to like put his foot in, kind of like get in everybody's faces, even if all the cops or even if the ambulance guys would tell him, hey, back off, give him some space, like you still gotta.
And once he makes it big is when he can chill, but he pushes it further and further and further to the point to where it's like, bro, not even recognizable anymore.
Right.
Well, and he needs, like, I think his character needs to keep pushing it further and further and further. Like when Nina compliments him at the end, like, he's inspiring us to strive a little bit further. But it's kind of like it's his psyche that he has to keep upping the ante and keep going bigger every time.
There's always going to be a critical moment.
Yeah.
There's always going to be another critical moment. This could be described as the critical moment.
I think that's actually something that's really good about his character. Like he was like insanely good with socializing and just getting inside people's heads.
That's what I was going to say earlier that I forgot.
So he knows people so well.
Yeah.
the scene where Rick and him are talking.
You don't know people, man.
That where Rick tells him he doesn't understand people, and then a few minutes later, he's trying to convince Rick to go outside and record, and then Lou says, "Do you ever think that the problem isn't that not that I don't understand people, but that I don't like them?"
Yeah.
And I think that Lou, in his own fucked up way, thinks. Well, I mean, he kind of does understand people in such a way that
that's why he doesn't like them, because he understands them.
Right, and he understands in such a way that it's so easy for him to manipulate people, because he can take people apart into sections. I would think like that, to try and get into his mind. I think he takes people apart into sections. Like Nina, for example, he takes her apart and says, "What's important to Nina? Her money and her career. Okay, those are the two things I need to focus on, and make sure that I make those things reliant on me. Makes them reliant on him, gets what he wants." Same thing with Rick, and I think that's why he put the ad in the newspaper like that, because he wanted someone desperate.
Makes you think, what shaped a person like that?
Yeah.
What shapes a person to become like that? What shapes Lou to be that way?
Desperation, I think.
Yeah,
Desperation.
He feels incredibly superior to people too.
Yeah, I believe that. I think. Well, yeah, that's what I think. I think he, in his own fucked up way, he understands people to such a degree that he understands them enough to hate everyone.
That's strange though, right?
Well, and he doesn't have like the same ties that most people have. Like, he's living by himself. Like, his biggest emotional attachment is to a plant.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So he's never really grown attached to anybody in his life. It seems like maybe he has like some origins of Louis Bloom, but
maybe that's the fun part, is we're wondering how he got to that.
Yeah,
point.
how does he get to where he's at? But yeah, he's really he's a man on an island, and
he's desperate, but he still thinks he still thinks he's above people.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think it is definitely that kind of isolation. He's just living by himself. Like, the only thing he cares about really is either his business, his job, making money, or that damn plant. And I think it's because of that he has no ties. Like, he's morally disconnected from the rest of human society. So he's able to use these exploits. He's able to say, "Oh yeah, you actually need me in order to keep your contract, so you can you can keep working at that low level."
And most people wouldn't even be able to see that.
Yeah.
But he sees it, because he's not like, he doesn't feel like he's bogged down by human issues.
I mean, I
it's
feel
almost like he's an alien.
He's
it's
like an alien. Yeah,
he's been on the island so long that like he just doesn't have any urge to
cold.
return.
Right.
He's completely cold.
Yeah.
It's like, I would say that he also, like, I remember reading about how there were some people that did a study into the most realistic character, the most realistic psychotic character, and the one that they picked was from No Country for Old Men. I forget the character's name and the actor's
Javier
name.
Bardem's
Yeah,
character?
yeah, that's him. They said that it was him.
Real
but,
quick, have you seen No Country for Old Men?
I have not.
Oh,
You have for sure.
I have not.
What?
Yeah.
Have you seen No Country for Old Men?
Next time on GarageCast.
Yeah.
Country for Old Men.
I really like that movie too.
I gotta put my movies into the hat.
It's all right. We'll just pick the ones. But they said that Javier Bardem's character from No Country for Old Men was the most realistic one, and I think that Lou Bloom exhibits a lot of the same characteristics of a psychopath, except that he still shows emotion, but only when he doesn't get the things that he wants. So and the only emotion he really shows is anger.
He's like a child not getting what he wants.
Right.
He's throwing tantrums.
It's almost like, as a child, he learned how to manipulate his parents into getting the things that he wants, and then from that point forward, never grew up and just spent his whole life manipulating. And because everything that he does is super performative, except for the only real interactions I would say that are genuine him is when he's talking to Nina and when he's talking to Rick. And it's only a few times. Like, I remember one of the creepiest lines in the movie to me is when he's interviewing Rick, and he's like, "It's a great opportunity for some special someone," and he's like, like with the trauma. Right, yeah, and it's just like, oh man, because especially if you've seen the movie before, it's like that's
what that implication is.
Yeah. And it's just everything that he does is like, he's never actually himself, except for in specific situations when he's with people that he has to be himself around, and he's okay with that. It doesn't bother him, which typically characters, when you see characters that aren't able to be themselves, like in The Lobster, for example, it bothers them, and you can tell that it bothers them. But for him, he does not give a single fuck. Like, he's completely 100% okay with being that sort of like performative person for his whole life, you know.
Is he though? We don't know that.
It seems like it.
Maybe deep down though, he's like, I just want to be loved.
Maybe, but realistic, like it, because again, every time that we see him be himself, he's always angry. So it's almost like
even when he tries to court Nina, and like as soon as she says, "I'm not interested," right? He immediately goes to like, "All right, time to blackmail you."
Yeah, exactly.
I want to fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna do whatever I can.
He's like thought 10 steps ahead before he's gotten into this conversation with Nina, like how he's gonna, or maybe he hasn't. Maybe he just like
thinks
does it on the fly. Like maybe he's.
I also feel like it's kind of a mix of both, because he did say, like, you know, when they went out for dinner, he knew pretty much everything about her before like they even opened up a conversation. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that, like, people say this a lot for industries like filmmaking, for example, just because that's what I'm familiar with. Is you always need to be prepared for the opportunity to present itself. So like you work and you work and you work and you work. When the opportunity presents itself, you strike. So I think that's kind of what he does, is he researches, gains all this information that he needs, and then when he either creates he forces the opportunity and then strikes, or waits for the opportunity to present itself. In this movie, I feel like for the majority of the time he forces it and then uses it. Like, it feels very natural for him to do that, to manipulate people the way he does. But I think that he has probably researched a surplus of information and then used the things that work in the scenario that he ends up in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He always turns any situation he's in into his favor.
Right.
If he doesn't get to the scene first, you know, if the other Nightcrawlers were there before him,
he fucking kills him.
Yeah, he will make an advantage out of him by, I don't know, breaking their
Which I want to talk about that before we run out of time. Something that I really like in this movie is the mirror scene. Typically in movies,
smashes it.
Yeah, typically in movies, when there's a mirror scene, it's typically used to show the good two different sides of the character. Yeah, an internal struggle. And typically the mirror is usually the bad guy, and the character that we are with is typically the good guy. And a lot of times this is the turning point in a lot of films, where the sort of good guy, or the guy who is struggling with his morals, or whatever he's struggling with or she's struggling with,
fully commits to being good.
Yeah, fully commits to being the good person.
And
this movie, it's flipped around. And I think that the reflection is supposed to be like his good morals.
That's where he becomes fully cutthroat and fully.
Yeah, exactly.
And when it breaks, it's kind of like, well, you know, whatever is left of his morals, it's completely gone.
Yeah, he destroys that aspect of himself.
He fully becomes that animal.
Fully cracked.
Cracked.
Like the mirror.
Which, again, that scene was improvised by Jake Gyllenhaal. Apparently they were doing that scene for, like, it was written in the script, but apparently they did like a ton of takes for that scene, and they were recording for like 6 hours or something like that, just that scene. And then Jake Gyllenhaal did that, and they were like, that's the one. And so, like, I think that, again, I don't mean to disrespect Dan Gilroy, but I don't know if this movie would be as good as it was if it were not for Jake Gyllenhaal, which is why he's like my favorite actor of all time. Because I fucking love this.
Especially loved Ryan Gosling.
I really like Ryan Gosling too, but Jake Gyllenhaal.
Who would win in a fight, Ryan Gosling or Jake Gyllenhaal? Just playing.
Judging by Only God Forgives, Jake Gyllenhaal would whoop Ryan Gosling's ass.
What about Jake Gyllenhaal, Southpaw?
Wait, wasn't Ryan Gosling like super karate man in Only God Forgives?
Yeah. No, he got his ass kicked. Well, I guess sometimes, but
there are a lot of hands in that movie.
The majority of the time, he got his ass kicked a lot in that movie. But anyways, yeah. So that mirror scene, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah. Then again, I kind of anticipated it like 3 hours in advance because fucking.
You've seen it before.
I've seen it before, but also you love talking about that scene.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see what you would say about this film because I know you love this movie.
Yeah. No, this is.
I guess like seeing this movie for the first time. Actually, so. Kind of small eye. I did see like part of it, like, you know, scrolling through TV one time. That was only the break-in or the house scene or the mansion scene. But like, I guess seeing through it like the first time, I kind of had like a lot of predictions what would happen. Like, okay, he needs a lot more darker content because in reality, that's what the media wants. They don't really care about the people involved. They just care about who's going to be watching it and how much money they're going to be making off of it.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. Exactly. So I feel like he would definitely adopt a darker personality. He was probably going to sacrifice his assistant. Was it Chris or
Rick?
Rick.
Yeah.
So I feel like Rick was probably going to die, you know, when he said get out of the car.
Yeah.
I felt like he was going to get shot. Maybe not at that scene, but like, he was going to die. I had a lot of prediction, but still, like, it was definitely a good movie. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hero or person trying to struggle to survive becomes a hero. And like, it was more like kind of, he was more of a hero, just somebody trying to survive, finds a way to make money, and just falls down a dark
just manipulates
path,
the fuck out of
it. The whole movie,
path.
we're going deeper into his psyche, and it's becoming, and I think it culminates in that mirror scene.
Yeah.
Where you see like that's how he treats himself when he's cracked.
Yeah. Well, and also a big thing in that scene as well is immediately after that, like literally the very next shot is him messing with the van. It goes from the mirror scene, him walking away, and then the next shot is the van, and then you're like oh
this
shit.
Is the idea he came away with after he screams at it. He's like, I'm gonna kill someone.
Because I remember when we were watching it, I forget who it was, but somebody literally like exclaimed, they were like, "That's the mayhem van!" as soon as it got to that, because we know like as soon as you see that scene, you're just like, oh shit.
What was I gonna say? We can also kind of tell that, like, at least for me, it's not even about a hero. Straight up, we know that it's just a movie with a protagonist. And
I mean, was it really like a protagonist though? Because he's not technically like doing a lot of the right things.
Well, even a protagonist, like, that's just the main character.
Yeah,
that's
main
the
character.
dude,
Yeah.
You know, and that's it. And what was I gonna say? Like, I mentioned, I think you guys heard this throughout the film as we were watching. I kept saying, like, he would say stuff to random people, and if you didn't know what kind of person he was, it would just be like normal chill stuff. Like, it would just be like, he was okay, maybe a little weird, a little offhand, or whatever the fuck the term is, but like,
well, socially awkward. He might
but there's nothing wrong with that.
Spectrum or something.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's still kind of like, oh, it's just a normal dude. And then as you go deeper and deeper, it's like the stuff that he does becomes way more creepy.
And I think that's what's so scary about his character too, is because like we could know people like this that we just don't know well enough.
Yeah, because we don't spend enough time with him.
Yeah.
Or through like that lens of a film camera,
right,
or of a camera.
And I guess I don't know, a lot of the stuff that he does is also in private. That like a lot of the creepier stuff that he does is in the shadows, you know. Anyways, NightCrawler, great movie.
Enjoyable film.
Favorite movie of one of my favorite movies of all time.
Did Mylan leave?
I don't know. But anyways, let's.
I thought he was taking a dump or something.
Next movies. Who wants?
Wait
to
a minute.
pick?
Grab those two. Those will be. Grab those two. Grab one. It'll be one of mine.
One or two?
I don't remember.
There's three here. Let's just throw them all in there.
Wait, should we like all grab one and then like wait until we get to the last one? That's the one we choose.
No, we're just gonna do it normally.
That takes too much time and effort.
Just grab everyone except.
Get it in there, Michael.
Listen, that's
what the fuck.
There's a toy in there.
We're watching Warhammer.
Warhammer.
Oh, wait.
Please be Mad Max. Please be Dark Crystal.
You pulled out two.
I was making it more
spicy,
spontaneous. I don't know.
Which movie is it?
Train Spotting.
Yeah!
Train Spotting.
We're gonna watch Ewan McGregor.
I haven't seen this. So.
This movie's fucking great.
I've heard it's good.
It's one of my favorite movies. See you in Scotland, motherfuckers. Scotland.